A lot of people assume that their issue is that they need to pray more and they need to read their Bible more in order to get closer to God. I feel like the biggest problem is obedience, right? You have to be willing to listen to the prayer that you're praying. You have to be willing to listen to the feedback that you get. Because if you're praying to God to get rid of your confusion, and God is like, all right, lead that relationship, and you start questioning God, like, God, it's a million other ways you could do it. Like, nah, do something else. It possibly is a million other ways, but God said to do that specifically. He said lead that relationship. You know why you're confused on who your future spouse is, or why you're confused on why you can't love, or why your love isn't being reciprocated, is because you're in that relationship that's not serving you, a relationship that's not fulfilling, that's not for you, that's not God ordained. So God said lead that relationship, and you will see. And a lot of us will fight that. Of why, God? No, do a different way. Do something else. God said what he said. It doesn't change. So if he told you a certain way to do something, do it. He's not going to be like, all right, you don't want to do it that way? I'll give you another way to do it. No. He said lead our relationship, and he going to stand on that. That's what he's going to leave you with. That last step, and you be like, God, where are you? I can't hear you. Listen to the last thing he told you. Lead our relationship. And that's just an example. But you have to be willing to listen. That's the biggest way to draw closer to God, is listen to that voice, that small voice that you are hearing, right? Before you become obedient, you obviously have to know what that voice is. But after that, you have to learn to listen to the voice in order to have your prayers answered, in order to actually hear God. Because we hear God, but we ignore him. God tells us to do certain things, and because it doesn't align to what our flesh wants, and it doesn't co-sign with our bad behaviors, we don't want to listen to it. God will say, we'll pray to God, God, I feel depressed, I feel sad. And he'll be like, stop listening to that music. And we're like, no, God, this is my favorite artist, stop listening to it. And we're like, well, you're going to have to do something else. It's another way. It could be 1,000 ways. It could be 1,000,000,000,000 ways. And God said, stop listening to that music. If you don't want to listen to that, then the prayer is useless, right? Because of course the prayer isn't going to work. When people pray and they're like, this isn't working, praying isn't working, it's because you're not listening to what he's saying. You're being disobedient. So the problem isn't that you don't know how to pray. There's no right way to pray. If you pray to God, if you say, God, I need help, that's praying. That is praying. But if you're not willing to listen to that help, then of course the prayer isn't going to work. So you have to practice learning to be obedient, learning to listen to authority, and learning to be okay with if God does not co-sign with you. God doesn't agree with us all the time. He doesn't. He knows what our soul wants. He does not satisfy our flesh ever. He hates our flesh. He hates it. He hates it. He does not co-sign with it whatsoever. So if your flesh wants something, he's going to break it. He's going to take away that very thing that you so strongly desire, to know that you don't need it in order to draw closer to him. You don't need it. So you need to learn to be obedient before you think that you have to read your Bible and you have to pray more and you have to just, sit with God more and worship. You have to be obedient to what he's telling you to do. Even if God says pick up that pencil in that small voice and you feel very called to do it, you need to pick up that pencil. God will test you in the most hilarious ways. He has a humor. He will say, do not walk over there. And you'll walk over there and you'll see something goes wrong because you didn't listen. And it'll be something so simple. You have to learn to listen to the big things and the little things. But that's the first step of drawing closer to God, for real. Other than praying and whatever the case may be, you have to be willing to listen. So you need to fight that thing in you that doesn't like to listen to authority, that doesn't want to be controlled. God's not trying to control you, he's trying to help you, right? The teacher isn't trying to control you and make you get an A. She's trying to help you get an A. If you don't get an A, it's not affecting her. It doesn't affect the teacher. It affects your grades. She's teaching you. So when God teaches us and he tells us this is how you do it, it's not because he's forcing us to get an A. By all means, if you want to get an F, go ahead. But God is saying this is how you get an A. If you don't want to listen to that, of course that prayer isn't going to work. Of course it ain't going to work. But learn to listen and be obedient, even if God does not co-sign with you.